I'm going to go through how to set up a CI/CD pipeline. This is just going to be a simple pipeline with a simple Vue Js project. And after that, we may add, manual approvals to it. But for now, we'll just do the basics using CloudPipeline, CodeBuild, and we're going to be using Elastic Beanstalk for the deployment. We could use code deploy and deploy it directly to an EC2, but with an EC2, you have to set up the image manually and you have to provision it yourself. So it's going to be a lot more time consuming to set that up. What we're going to do is we're going to use Elastic Beanstalk so that the Elastic Beanstalk can deal and handle the provisioning automatically. And also the good thing about Elastic Beanstalk is based on the traffic, it can scale automatically and it does that for you. The downside to it though is that you don't really have much control over how it scales and the infrastructure that you use. So if you have, a large amount of people using your site, then the costs can go up. Anyways, let's get to it. So what I'm going to do is I've got two EC2 instances already, so I'll just show you that before I go to the next thing. So I got my Vue demo EC2 instance, and I've also got a Cloud9 instance, and that's where we would be testing our sample project before deploying it on the pipeline. So let's go to Cloud9 and let's open up a sample project. So open IDE, minutes for this to load. Essentially what Cloud9 is it's an IDE in Amazon, and it allows you to access your servers directly instead of having to create a SSH connection from your local device to your servers. Okay, so this was the old files that I was working on, but what I'll do is probably just close everything. So let us make a project. So we're going to generate a Vue project using Vue CLI. These are the commands that you have to run on command line to be able to use a CLI, and essentially it's just Vue create my project, Vue UI. So let's go back. So Vue, so let's just see, Vue. So Vue CLI is already installed, so let's go Vue create demo Vue. Okay. So let's just select the first option and press enter, and that will just generate the files of the project. Okay, so now while that's getting ready, let's set up our Git account. So I've already made a project previously. That was when I was testing the CI/CD pipeline, but for this example, I will just create another repository just to show you from scratch how to actually connect the Git repository to the actual AWS CI/CD pipeline. So, okay, so I'll make this private and create a repository. So now it has instructions to create a new repository on command line or push an existing repository on the command line. But because we're using the CLI, we're going to reference the origin to this repository in the command line. So now let's go into demo, view project, and before we start, so let's just check. So let's follow these instructions. Okay, and branch M. So master branch is changed to main name, and then git push origin. I already have my details on here, so my SSH key is already on my GitHub account from this server, so it should be able to push. Yep, so git status. Okay, log. So see, now the head is at main, and you also got origin main and the first initial commit. So let's go back to this repository. Let's refresh. Okay. So now what we can do is let's go npm. So let's just check the package.json for the scripts. So as you can see here, you've got serve, build, and lint. Now for the CI/CD, we're going to be using the build script, but for now, let's just test if this is working. So let's go right npm run serve, and that will run the script serve. Okay, so starting development server. Okay, so now it's at localhost 8080, port 80. And to be able to view that, we have to go back to let's go back to our dashboard and figure out what our public IP address is for the EC2 instance for Cloud9. So, and essentially I'll show you what I've done here. So that's the public IP address, but also I've already set a rule. I've already set a rule initially just for testing purposes. So inbound rules 8080. So that will allow me to access this server running in this EC2 instance. So now what I'll do is let's go back. Let's go EC2. So let's copy the public IP address of this EC2 instance, and then it's on port 8080, right? So that should, and there you go. That's our project that we can see working. Now, before we continue, I just want to set this up because before we set this up for the CI/CD pipeline, it's best if we have a separate branch for that. Say, for example, when you have your Git flow, let's go images. So Git flow usually have, say, you got masters, hotfix, release, develop, feature, and so you've got multiple features, right? But you might want to configure the CI/CD pipeline to trigger on the master commits or the release commits. And in this case, let's create a release branch for the CI/CD pipeline. In this case, I'm going to do it through the web interface so you can see what's happening. So at the moment, there's only main. Now let's go, let's add in release, then create release branch from main. Okay, so main release. Now from main, just to follow best practices, we'll create develop. And then say from develop, let's create a feature branch. Okay, so we have feature, develop, release, and main. So now what we can do is, let's go back to, so if you look at the branches at the moment as main, git branch origin. In this case, it doesn't have the most up-to-date details, so you go git fetch. That will get the most up-to-date details from the origin. Now we've got origin, develop, feature 1, main, release. Okay, so let's just open the files. And here's your Vue project, components, and you've got your hello world, right? Okay, so let us set up the pipeline. So let's go to code pipeline. And create pipeline, so pipeline name, demo Vue. So let's create a new service. Well, I'm choosing an existing service role because I previously named a project that I deleted as demo Vue, and there's no point in making another role, so I'm using an existing one. And default location, default AWS managed keys, next, source provider. Okay, so this is where you're going to grab your GitHub and link your GitHub to CodePipeline. So we're going to use version 2. So okay, so usually you'd go connect to GitHub, and that will open up this window, and you have to create a new connection. But in this case, I'm going to be using an existing connection that I've already created. Okay, so once it's connected, now you have to choose which project that you want, and let's go back. Okay, demo Vue, connect. Okay, so now that we should be able to, yeah. So here's our new repository that we've just created, and choose, branch name, choose a branch of the repository. So this branch will be the one that triggers the build. So let's trigger it on release, and this is the option where you can manually deploy, or you can change detection options. Start the pipeline on source code change. So when this branch updates, right, when code is pushed as a commit to the release, then it will automatically update, unless you unselect this option, and you would have to manually approve of the changes. Okay, so next, build option. Now let's do code build, because what we're going to do is we are going to build this Vue. We are going to run the Vue build scripts so that we can have a production ready static files to upload to the environment. Okay, so project name. So let's create another build. So demo Vue and CI/CD CI/CD demo. Okay, so manage image, yeah. Operating system, let's choose Ubuntu. Runtime, standard, image, code build 5. Okay. So let's just use service role. Okay, so in this case, we'll use build spec and we'll write that up later, and I'll show you how you do that. Or you can add in your own specific commands to build. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so we've made demo view, single build. So next, now our deploy, we will choose Elastic Beanstalk. And we've already created an environment of it. So I've got one pipeline deploying to Vue dem, but we could also deploy to the same environment with another CI/CD pipeline. Now, what I'll do is before I press next, so just to review, so you've got your pipeline source stage, build stage, and deploy stage. Before I do anything, I have to set up the build spec for the demo, right? Because that is the files that you need to build the deploy files, right? So now let's go git checkout release. Let's make the change in, say, main first. Let's make the change in main, and then we'll merge it to release, right? So what we want is, in this project, create a file called build spec.yaml. Yeah, so we created this build spec.yaml file. Now open up that build spec file, and what we want, and I'll just copy it from a previously created build spec, so it's pretty much straightforward. Okay, so this build spec file will give instructions to CodeBuild on how to actually build the files, and it has a couple of phases. So it has install phase, pre-build phase, build, post-build. First phase is installing the dependencies. So this will install npm, it will upgrade pip and AWS CLI. Then what it will do is it will install the packages of this project. And then the build phase, it would run the build, and I'll just demonstrate what the build looks like here. So you'll have an idea of what the build stage is doing. So if I run npm run build, building for production, now you have this extra folder called dist, and there you go. So these files are generated, static files. Now I had to do a bit of a hack just to get these dist files to work on production, because the production server uses Nginx in Elastic Beanstalk. So what I'll do is essentially that hack is basically I copy the AWS deploy folder, which has my app.js and package.json file specifically for running the production files within the production server. So copy the deploy files into dist. So see how first the build spec runs the build, then it copies over additional files to that dist folder, and then the artifacts is what CodeBuild copies onto the S3 bucket for AWS to deploy to the Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create a new folder, and let's call that AWS deploy, where I will be putting my app.js, and then also my package. So the reason why I have this is that the package.json will install Express, and Express will be used to run the static files on the server. So with my other previous example, I'll just copy these two files to actually, let's delete those files. Okay, so I'll just show you what, let's save this file first. So I'll show you what is in app.js and package.json. App.js has Express. App.js has Express running in the background, and hostname, port, it will run the server based on the hostname and port used by Elastic Beanstalk once Elastic Beanstalk runs the app.js app. And package.json just shows, or just has the dependencies of Express and also the script node app.js. Now, let's get status. Let's get status. So we've created the AWS deploy and build spec.yaml. So let's go git add. So git diff add all. Okay. Yeah, so it added the app.js app.js, package.json, and YAML file, git log. So now let's go git commit, set up build files. Okay. So in this case, it doesn't know who I am. So let's go add in my details. So git config. And let's go back to, so my username is lindev. lindendev. Okay. So git con Okay, so git config list. So yep, username lindev. Now so git status. Okay, so git push. Okay, so let us just double check. Okay, refresh. So now we have AWS deploy files, app, and package JSON, and also we've got the build spec. Okay, so now let's merge to release. So git checkout release. So see how those files disappeared, and then git merge main. So git status. So we just merged, the differences to the release. Now the reason why I did that first is so that when we finalize the pipeline, then it has the build files that it needs, the build spec files that it needs to actually build the project. Okay, so let's go back to CodePipeline and let's create pipeline. Yep. So success, and now it's grabbing the source code. So we just have to wait and see what happens. Okay, so it succeeded. It got the code from Git. Now let's look at the build and let's see what's happening in the background. So now phase detail process submitted queued provisioning. So it's about to, so submitted queued provisioning, the build stage is, okay, so the build stage is creating a temporary environment to build the files. And now in this case, it failed. YAML doesn't exist. So let's just look at the logs. So let's go back. See how here it says source init, right? So it is building the first step of, so what we actually have to do, did I actually, that's right. I haven't pushed the changes to, so once I push the changes, that build should pass. So that's a good example. This build step failed because it's still the origin, the remote repository doesn't have the build spec file because it's still at the initial commit, and the update that I did is still on my local repo. So I'll just do git push. That should trigger the build again. Okay. So let's see, it should refresh. Maybe I'll just refresh this page and then you'll see the build running again. And let's go back to the details. So submitted queued, waiting for the provision, waiting for provisioning. So it's building, provision download source, and now it's installing. So let's go to the build logs. Okay, so pre-install phase. This is essentially executing that build spec file that we've written. Let me just close this. Okay, so this is this part. It's installing the recommended dependencies, building for production. So that is when it's executing npm run build. So yeah, and it's executed the script and it's success. And you know that it's successful because the status is success. Now here it's still lingering, but let's just refresh the page to update the status, and it should update with the build. And now deploy. It's in progress now, so it's building to Elastic Beanstalk. So let's open that up. Elastic Beanstalk. It's loading. So this is the environment. Let's just wait until this says deployed. And then once it's deployed, okay, so it's successfully deployed. And now let's look at the URL, what it looks like. Okay, so here's your app. So we've successfully deployed a application to the CI/CD pipeline of AWS using CodeBuild, CodePipeline, and Elastic Beanstalk. Now we could have used deploy and deployed it directly to an EC2 instance, but you would have had to set up the environment manually with maybe an AMI or a Docker container, and if you want more control over the deployment, then you would probably use infrastructure as code to script the actual deployment environment. But in that case, you would have to design it properly, and it will take much more time. And that's the reason why we're using Elastic Beanstalk to provision it automatically, so that we don't have to worry about the provisioning. Okay, so now that's done. Let's show you what happens when you add changes. Say the app says, "Welcome to your Vue Js app," and now let's go. Okay, so let's change it up up a bit, and let's change "Welcome to your Vue Js app," and let's write a demo of CI/CD of Vue Js app. So say we've made the change in the code and you want to see that in the deploy environment straight away. Let's just go. Actually, maybe let me show you the proper way of doing things. So I'll just drop this change. Right, now git checkout. Let's go feature, right? So git. Now the feature itself doesn't have the recommended files, right? So what we have to do is let's go to develop first so that we follow the git flow. And from develop, let's merge the changes from master. Or because we have the most up-to-date changes on the release at the moment, let me pull the changes from. We made the changes in master and we merged it to release. So the master should have the most up-to-date changes. So we'll pull those changes to develop. So git merge, because we're already in develop, so git merge master. That will, main, git merge, because we changed the name before, main. So that now has all the updates, and now let's go git checkout, feature 1, right? Git merge with dev develop. Okay, so we're grabbing now the changes from develop. So we grab the changes from master to develop, and then the changes from develop to feature. So the feature has all the files that it needs to build the project, right? Now, okay, so let's say we wanted to make a change in, and also you don't necessarily have to do that. What you could do is have the build spec only available on the release branch, so that no one else can change that file, and the deploy files on the release branch, and then whenever everyone merges from their feature branches, it just combines their code with the actual code that has the build files. Okay, so let us make a change. So the changes that we wanted to make before. So instead of welcome to your Vue JS app, let's say demo of CI/CD Vue app. Save that. Now git status. So git add all, git commit. Changing title. So out for some reason. Git config. I don't like setting things global in terms of the username because you might be working on different repositories. You don't want to set the global username as that one user if you're using multiple repos. So it's ahead of 2 commits. Git log, let's see, just to make sure. So init, okay, so feature 1, git status, git push, okay, git status, so git log. So now your feature 1 is with the feature 1 of your feature 1 is with the feature of it's in sync with the origin. Okay, so let's just check the change that we made. Demo of CI/CD Vue. Yep, so we made that change. Now, notice how I pushed that code, right? And if we refresh this, you don't see any rebuilds, right? Because it only builds based on if you see the changes on release, right? So the reason why I showed you that is because I want to demonstrate the actual workflow of a development environment where people are working on a feature branch, they're making some changes, and they're testing locally on their device. Then once they're ready, they want to, they do a pull request, right? But then I'll show you just manual, instead of making a pull request, I'll merge it directly and show you what would happen if, say, the merge requests or the pull requests are approved. And once it's approved, the code gets merged into from feature to develop, and then develop to master, and then master to release, right? And there's manual approvals along the way, right? So let's go git check out develop, right? Okay, so let's just git push the the commit for the develop, because we merged before, but we didn't push the changes onto the master. So git push, git status. Now git merge with feature 1. So see, now we have the change. Git status, and git push. And then git checkout main, git status, git merge with develop. So you've merged from feature to develop, and then from develop to main, git status, and then now main has demo of CI/CD. Now git push, so that's pushing it to the origin. Now let's go back over here, and no build has ran again, but it will only happen when I go git checkout, so release, right? And then let's just double check this. Oh, wait, that's another project. Sorry. Let's just double check. And it's the same as the previous one. Welcome to your Vue Js app. Now, let's go git merge with master. Oh, I keep forgetting it's no longer master, but it's main. So git status, git push. So that should trigger the build. And let's refresh this. Okay, so build in progress. And it's building based on the commits that we did on release. Yep, build. And then so it's building the files, building for production. Now, what I want to discuss is this pipeline is a simple pipeline, but you can add, so you can add stages, and sometimes you might want to, so after the build, you might want to add, say, testing, or you might want to add another stage in between, and it might be, say, manual approval. So, for example, you might have, say, 2 deploys. One deploy might be to one Elastic Beanstalk, and that Elastic Beanstalk is your QA or staging environment, and then you've got another deploy that deploys to the actual production environment, right? So in that case, you might want to set it up manually with, their own specific environments. QA might have the testing environment, so you might have dependencies based for your testing. And staging might be set up so that it can do load testing, and then production will be set up so that it connects directly to your users. So you'll probably connect it through Route 53, and you'll connect it to CDN. So you'll connect it to CloudFront. So you'll connect it to the CloudFront, so you could manage the content delivery network with that. Yeah, so that should be finished, and it looks like it's deployed. Now it looks like it's deployed. So we've changed the title to demo of CI/CD Vue Js, and it's populated the changes into the server. And yeah,